more terrifying than any APT. I want to give you some perspective on Black Hat, RSA, security conferences in general. And then I'm going to do a little bit of ranting. And if people follow me on LinkedIn, I'm not shy. I tend to state what I believe in a little bit vociferously. But I want to make this a very much an open kind of dialogue on some issues that I think as a profession we need to be aware of. So without any further ado, whoops. The upside of these conferences, who had an opportunity this year to go to Black Hat or RSA? So a relatively small number. There's some good things that occur. One is that you end up seeing people, just like we're doing here this evening, is you get a chance to see friends and colleagues that you typically don't get a chance to see in person very often. When I was a research director at Gartner, there were two very prominent analysts that actually live in North County, as the crow flies about 5 miles from me. I never saw them until I was at like a London security summit or some other place across the country. So the opportunity to actually get in person, share stories, collaborate, learn from, frankly, complain about some of the things that are going on in the industry is very important. So these are some really good friends. Whoops, this thing is really damn sensitive. I will hit it once. Perry Carpenter, Transformational Security Awareness. This is a foundational book. An exceptionally good book on developing, fomenting cybersecurity awareness programs. Sunil Yu, has anybody read the Cyber Defense Matrix? A couple of students were there, and I went in and I bought copies and gave it to them. This is how important this book is. Exceptionally good book, very clean, simple, easy to read, not terribly long, but it really puts the NYSE framework and how we do things in perspective. And just a hell of a nice guy. He's now the CEO at Gnostic. So a very, very sharp guy. Helen Patton, she's done a lot of work. In fact, she's got a forthcoming book about mid-level career changes, but how to effectively get into the cybersecurity profession. This is something that I think we all owe. We have, students and individuals that are trying to break in. Let's help them. Let's figure out ways that we can help them get into this profession that we hold so dear. So it's a really good way to kind of meet and see other folks that are doing books, write about things, being able to participate and collaborate. I'm a little bit biased on these. I'm the guy in the Hawaiian shirt, just in case. But Justine Phillips, I know a number of you might know Justine here locally. She's now with Baker and McKinsey, great friend, hero. We collaborated on a book on data privacy. Up there is Gary Hayslip on the right. He used to be the CISO for the city of San Diego. He's now the CISO at SoftBank. They're doing a lot in AI and development. On the left there is a good friend of mine, Chris Forbes. That's the former CISO for the Federal Reserve. He is former Navy, and I think we have a couple of Navy folks. How many veterans are in here? Woohoo! So here, very, very much so. Absolutely brilliant. He knows more in his pinky than I could ever hope in a lifetime. He is exceptionally smart. And then David Motti, anybody here focusing in on identity governance, identity security, things of that nature? Yeah. David was a former analyst as well at Gartner, does a lot of work in this space. He just recently moved down from Canada and lives up in the North County. But the chance to see folks, talk to them, do book signings, a number of different things. It's a blast. That's one of the joys that I have in these. Also the chance to present. I'm the guy without the Hawaiian shirt in that time. That was idiocy. I should have worn a Hawaiian shirt. The other thing I did that was really stupid was at B-Sides, I showed up in a suit and tie. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, so I screwed that up. Pearson in the middle there teaches forensics at USC. Really, really sharp guy. He's a former forensics person, Kroll. And the FBI InfraGard Cyber Futures, and I think as we noted as a plug, coming up on either the 6th or 7th, we have the Cyber Futures at USD that's going to be really good. And we'll go over a bunch of different issues related to it. So it's a good opportunity from a collaboration perspective. There's also an opportunity to hang out with friends. This is Jax. He's got the funniest smile I've seen of any dog. Do you guys listen to podcasts like Alan Alford's The Cyber Ranch? That's Alan and his traditional black hat, but at RSA. And then Gary Hayslip doing what he does best, sitting, uh, doing all the other things that he does. But it's an opportunity to share ideas, learn from other folks, etc. The if you will, kind of the levity side. Then the issue is, what is our industry about? What do we actually do? Non-rhetorical. Okay, risk. What else? Insurable risk. What else do we do? Defend. Defend against what? Yeah. Criminals. Criminals. And nation states, right? Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, this is about crime. And we lose sight of that. And I think as a profession, we need to take pause and put this front and center. You know, this is nation state activity, Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Syria to a lesser extent, and others trying to break in and affect critical infrastructure, steal data, do a number of very nefarious things in the environment, as well as cyber criminal activity for lucrative things. Ransomware funds North Korea's missile development. We should not lose sight of that. We tend to glorify this profession and everything, but at the same time, really what we're talking about is a lot of crime. And we've lost sight of that as an industry. And I think this is going to end up being our Achilles heel. If we're not moving the needle with respect to reducing crime and making it more difficult for an adversary to do the things that they're doing, we've failed. So again, a little bit on this. Are we moving the needle? Open-ended question. Are we getting better or are we getting worse? Worse. Why? Uh-huh.
With AI, that's even multiple.
Yep.
The same thing that we have been worried about.
It can be a good tool or a bad tool, used against us, used for us. Yeah. Has the needle really moved? Were there data breaches last year? Were there data breaches this year? I'll go you first and then you.
Private companies.
Uh-huh. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I should have mentioned that.
Yeah. So
By the way, he said mics.
thank you. Yeah. So nation state threat actors tend to have unlimited funding from a government that's backing them.
Yep.
Meanwhile, private companies have limited funding or budget to protect against those threats.
Exactly. Exactly. It's difficult. If you're up against a nation state, the game's already effectively over for most companies. If they want in, they will find a way in.
So a sensitive subject for me. I lived 11 miles south of the DMZ. And what I can share is that we're becoming numb. We are becoming numb and docile, and we're making this normal. And so we say, well, if the three-letter agencies are hacked, then what do? And we become frozen and we become complacent. But most importantly, we're normalizing it, and that's the danger.
Yep. I could not agree more. That is perfectly said. We've become numb to it. How many get breach, you know, like your information's been compromised letters, you know, data breach letter. They tend to be routine, right? Every month and a half, 2 months, some organization, you're not even sure where, may have had an issue. They won't disclose why, you know, and we're the victims. So respectfully, I don't think we're moving the needle. I'm just going to load these up. Cursory look of just some of the breaches. What's important is up in the top left there. We're people based on the quality of our cybersecurity programs. People have died based on the quality of software code. There are life and death consequences to our security programs, to the quality of our code, to the work that we are doing. It has national security implications. I'm biased because I'm very engaged with the FBI InfraGard program, but even if you're not, just the way of life here in our country is when stuff happens, what does that do? It undermines our trust. So one of the challenges, if you go and you take a look at an end user license agreement or an enterprise agreement, there's going to be two clauses that I would invite you to read if you're so inclined. One would be the disclaimer of warranty. Software is manufactured absent any warranty and limitations of liability. You know, I'm sorry I brought down your organization for a month and a half because of poor code. I will give you a month back in your license fees. Other industries don't have this. If I get in my car and there's a mechanical failure that wasn't my, me not doing the appropriate maintenance, the manufacturer is liable. We make code absent liability. There's a massive inflationary impact that is likely to occur when we start holding software manufacturers to account for the quality of the code that they're doing.
So online, I think we have a really interesting one. And that is, they say that the compliance is not matched to the actual security engineering. Like people are trying to get compliance on paper, but not actually engineering the security to match that compliance.
Agreed. There's a euphemism, checklist security in a pejorative. Actually, checklist security is not bad. If you're going through and you're validating things, you're ensuring configurations are locked down. If you think about security by design, where you're doing softening guidelines versus hardening guidelines, that makes sense. But absolutely right. So again, I'll just back this up. Are we moving the needle? Non-rhetorically. We have to, as a profession, think very long and hard about the quality of the work that we're doing. Yeah.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Hello? There it is. So as you know, I work in technical security.
Yep.
And I actually think the needle is moving from a technical perspective, but once again, the investment needed to implement it and the human investment needed to implement it is where the failing comes from. I mean, because the technology is on steroids.
You've seen the end of this presentation.
I have. And AI's only, as anybody knows that's played with like AI SOC technology, it's a million times better than a human. And that sucks.
And
but that's true. But so it's really like, I think one part of the equation is moving the needle, but it's the response to business just doesn't get it.
Exactly.
Until you get attacked and you get your cybersecurity insurance
not a problem
ripped.
until it is.
Yes.
Exactly. So is this the right response? Thinking about these large conferences, the events and things of that nature. What is your take on that? I did an interview with Marcella Lee on Channel 8 on TikTok. If you go and you look at the privacy policy or the terms of service, you should have a cardiac event. They preload content. Preload content. Think about that. I didn't share anything. I don't use it. I have never gotten close to it for obvious reasons. But if you happen to have it on your phone, they can preload content. They have access to everything on the phone, including keystrokes. So there's a lot there. So we're in a very serious cybersecurity conference, and we've got that.
So who in here uses TikTok?
Okay, so who's using TikTok? There we go. We're too old. Yep. Yeah. I don't use anything Meta. Yeah. I don't want to sponsor Zuckerberg's bunkers and all the other crazy stuff that he's doing. So again, what does this say about our industry? Another thing, you've got these massive halls and they're expensive. And the reality, Trellix, you guys are there, everyone's there. This is a mafia. Black Hat, RSA, these types of conferences, it is literally a mafia. If you're not there, then why aren't you there, et cetera? The costs, the fees, it's exorbitant. So it's huge. But effectively, we're dealing with crime. And we're effectively celebrating criminal activity in a way at conferences like this. Again, my 2 cents, my rant, if you will. And then we have these booths that are there to inform security leaders, CISOs, and the like around it. And we'll just take a look at a couple of these. You know, on the left there is Wiz. Looks like a convenience store with some stuff down below. It's kind of a bizarre thing. I mean, my reaction to it was, what the heck is that? I'm not really sure. Unfortunately, I suck as a camera person. I did a horrible job. But here's Orca, a Wiz competitor, with puppies. You know, rarely when I think about, you know, CNAP and cloud security and runtime security, I immediately go to puppies. You know, and if that isn't good enough for you, you got some goats. This is RSA. These two are RSA. The one on the far left is Wiz from Black Hat. So again, goats, puppies, grocery store motifs. And Wiz was acquired for $32 billion. Are we moving the needle? It's a tough call.
Nope, nope, nope.
Oh, wait, he's got a microphone coming.
No, I'm just trying to understand what exactly your concern is. Is it because of this valuation is not 32 billion, or is it the way these companies are doing the business is kind of unprofessional, or it's not kind of aligning
There's a
with
there's a lack of professionalism in dealing with the serious issues in the way that these conferences are held. There's value in collaborating, sidebar discussions with fellow CISOs, hugely valuable. How are you handling this? How are you thinking about that issue? But when you have scenarios where you've got stuff like this, it kind of belittles, if you will, the cybercrime that's actually occurring, or the geopolitical, bluntly, you know. So my buddy Andy Ellis, he's the guy on the far left. I'm again the guy in the Hawaiian shirt, and then a couple other folks that are there. He went to Black Hat as well as a number of us, and did a bit of analysis. And this is where we'll get into kind of the heart of the discussion, and we'll get very collaborative on this. But Andy, by the way, 20 years CISO. He was the CISO at Akamai, former Air Force. Very badass smart. He will also tell you how badass smart he is. He's not shy in that. But effectively what he saw was, you know, a third of the companies that were there were referencing AI at their booth. So going back, Chad, to your point, you know, how AI is coming in things, it's very important. Zero Trust appeared in, who's read NIST 800-207 or 208? I always get them confused. Yeah, that should be front and center. Zero Trust works. Policy enforcement and trust are really critical, but we're not talking about it, you know, in a way that I think is fundamentally meaningful. And all zero trusts. This is where
now it's all
the
AI.
semantics. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as I know, several years back, if you brought up AI and ML at a conference, you were laughed at. So we have a lot of semantics, but we're still killing people with cyber. We've got birds dropping out of the sky because of poor code, and our nation state adversaries continue to get access to our critical infrastructure.
So I'm repping a similar conference, but something I ran into that I thought was kind of an issue too is there's an affirmation bias with the companies that can afford to do that. And you have an incredibly potent open source tools that might be 98% as effective, but they can't afford to go to conferences like this.
Exactly.
Get their voice
with
heard.
the mafia comment. Yeah.
I don't need a microphone, but I will. I was asked to go to a university. I won't even say the state because then you know the university. And the laughter is about quantum now. So it's just history repeating itself. And I had a conversation about quantum and how it needs to be relevant and leveraged. And so that was laughed, just like blockchain was. And so it's always a thing.
It's the semantics. again, falling in love with it. Then the other thing from a vendor manufacturer perspective, if everybody uses AI empowered, AI whatever, is there any differentiation that's out there? But it's a catch-22. If you don't reference it, you could be excluded, those sorts of things. So again, Andy did some interesting analysis. Jackie. No, but it's the people online.
I'm so sorry, guys. So I don't even feel like this is on, but anyhow, so I get what you're saying about people who should be talking about AI. The problem I see, don't get mad, is vendors will talk about AI like there's no tomorrow and not have any idea how it is doing anything relevant to what they're selling.
Yeah.
And so that is, to me, what I see as one of the biggest problems we're dealing with right now is that the vendors are articulating something that isn't reality with what or how their product is leveraging AI, or if it really even isn't.
Yeah. What we call AI in most cases might be supervised machine learning. It could be integration that we'll get into here in just a moment. But again, we've got these terms that we throw out kind of willy-nilly in one way or another. But then what is the role? This is going back, Chad, to your point. And I think there is a valid role for AI in security. And I think it will move the needle in certain areas. But what is the role of AI in our profession? And there's a couple of things. Configuration analysis. Again, hardening guideline, think like CIS benchmarks, or if you really do security by design, kind of the softening guidelines that a human can't do. Like I can't look at, thousands of lines of code and say, oh, there's a buffer overload issue right here. So that to me strikes me as something relatively beneficial. Just analysis. We talk about kind of the AI empowered security operations center. What does that look like? How do we do enrichment on alerts? What's the MAC address? What's the IP, time of day, logs, anything and everything that is associated with it, gathering that up and bringing it back into the analyst so that he or she can do that. We've kind of done this stuff before, though, different approach, SOAR, security orchestration, automation, and response tools, so there's a little bit of that. Pen testing, code reviews, entitlement reviews.
There are 4 V's I see. One is the velocity, value, volume, and variety.
Mm-hmm.
And doing these things manually, any of these analysis is time consuming and resource consuming. Okay, yep. So AI has a perfect answer for addressing these 4 concerns, which has been there for a while, since the IT started gathering the data, analyzing the data, and drawing some conclusions and things like that. So AI is kind of a tool. It can create a tool within a matter of few seconds. I can give you from my own experience. 3 years ago, we tried to implement. I work for a biotech company. We try to implement a tool which can gather the data around the world, and then as a part of this COVID vaccine research, it took for us 4 months to implement a small tool.
Yeah.
But now with the AI models readily available, especially in the cybersecurity field, we could implement the same stuff, within a matter of 3 weeks. So it,
our time skills are changing.
Yeah,
fundamentally, things are
here. The business, if you are not speed and the volume, the scaling and the volume, if you can't catch up to that, then your business is going to fail. And that's what.
It's
AI
the big that eat the
Yeah,
small.
I'm not saying it's
the fast that eat the slow.
Right, exactly.
Scenario. But again, think from a governance perspective, when, where, how, why, what are the kind of conditions precedent where you would start bringing in these types of tools or capabilities within your environment? Then the issue fundamentally is, are we prepared to govern and secure AI? This is an open-ended question. And a couple of things that I want to highlight here is, if we think about it, our economy runs on algorithms. they make pricing decisions, directional decisions, any number of different things. For those of us, as Dave mentioned in ISACA, kind of the CISA, Certified Information Systems Auditor, you don't typically get access to an algorithm. And you may not understand the mathematics of the algorithm to effectively opine on whether 2 + 2 = 4 and it's put in the right general ledger account. So we've got an issue there. There's an analog, fracking, as a good example. There's a lot of solvents that are getting put down into the ground to break open rock to extract oil, right? Fracking. That solvent, or whatever that liquid is effectively the intellectual property of the company that's doing that. There's also health implications. What happens if that solvent is poisoning groundwater? And that could happen, and that does happen. So then the issue is, which interest weighs most? If you're a regulator and you're overseeing a company that has got an algorithm that is being used for critical infrastructure, for financial services, whatever the case may be, we have this issue fundamentally of transparency with algorithms. That's a tough call. Intellectual property is what drives this economy forward. So how do we protect the economy and intellectual property, entrepreneurialism, while at the same time being able to evaluate and effectively opine on the efficacy of an algorithm? I don't have an answer for it. It's just a really, really tough challenge that we have right now. Then you start thinking about this. Waymo. Up at RSA, these are everywhere up in San Francisco. One of the fascinating things, is a number of the folks that are unfortunately homeless in San Francisco have figured out a way to kind of stick it to the man, as it were. If you go up to a Waymo and you just barely touch it, it will stop wherever it is. Kind of an interesting dynamic. So no pun intended, but what are the safety implications of AI-driven technology? Alex.
Something that I find fascinating is that in China, I've heard that if you don't have a self-driving car, if you're trying to sell a car in the market, people won't buy it because they're so used to self-driving cars there now.
BYD or whatever that company is. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is fascinating because their safety there isn't necessarily as high a standard as it is here. Maybe people don't trust giving up their control as much here.
Yep.
So it's just very fascinating that they're that much further ahead because of that difference between us and them. I haven't. That's what I've just been told from people.
Yeah. It's automatic pilot, with the plane. But this is important stuff. AI, algorithms, machine learning. This is driving, no pun intended, elements of the economy. So there's a lot there from a safety perspective that we need to be aware of. Who here, just out of curiosity, does threat modeling with the technologies and applications in their environment? By a show of hands. A couple. Okay. Back in the frame here. Adam Shostak's book, it's old. This is from 2014, but this is a classic. If you're involved in this space, I highly recommend it. There's courses on it. There's a number of different things. But essentially, the notion is that you create threat models for an application, a service, a device, whatever the case may be. The level of the threat model, it's a fairly beefy book, but the level of the threat model can vary based on the importance of the application at hand, but something to be aware of. And essentially, it gets down to stride. How do you spoof the identities, tamper with the data, repudiate transactions, have information disclosed, deny services, and not just distributed denial of services. There are a lot of other ways that you can take down a service very easily, even absent a lot of technology. And then elevation of privileges. So those are nasty things. And we got to figure out, okay, what do we need to do? What are the controls that we need to be implemented to ensure that doesn't happen? I'm going to bring us forward now with AI, and I want to ask a threat modeling question for him. So again, there's his book, highly, highly recommended. MCP. Who's familiar with MCP? Okay, I'll pick on someone to give me a high level. Sir. Oh.
Sorry.
What part of Mike didn't I get?
MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. It's a open source protocol to talk to different agents made by different vendors.
Yep.
It's a standard these days, just a plain JSON object.
Yeah, it intermediates
configuration.
requests.
Yes.
Exactly. Client, server, exactly. So when you see something like this, if you're a CISO, what's your gut reaction? Single point of failure, concentration point, object, protocol, device, human in the middle. You know, there's a lot of risk in MCP as a general rule of thumb. I'm going to give you a copy. I did a book that I'll give to you afterwards on third-party risk that will cure insomnia if you have it. It's big. But this is something fundamentally that we really do need to be concerned about. N8N applications like that are doing this. And they're extraordinarily beneficial. They're helping us do things faster, tie tools together. I'm old enough to remember Corba, Common Object Relational Bus. There we go. High five. Corba. Any place that you bring things together is a concentration point. And concentration points effectively just have inherently high risk. So again, we need to start thinking systemically about the tools that we use within AI. So do we have a software bill of materials? In this case, kind of within the integrated development environment, the IDE, you know, the workstation, the server, the applications that are connected to it. Have we done composition analysis around those? Most of what is running in AI is sitting on top of what? Kubernetes. Yeah, Linux and Kubernetes. So how secure is that environment? Are those images bloated? There's a great company, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Strider Technologies, that does a lot of work in insider risk. One of the things that they've started to do is extrapolate that insider risk analysis into the provenance of the code itself. So it's not just software code analysis, it's the Jane and John Doe that contributed to that particular environment. Oh, this individual's tied to the FSB. Is that high risk or low risk? You know, what level of contribution did they give to that particular environment? Dynamic, static, runtime testing, et cetera.
So why don't you extend your security boundary to bring these things within it, or do you think that's the ultimate answer?
Actually, if you go back to Sunil Yu, one of the things that he said, like, and we'll get into coding in just a moment, is where you can do it, where you can say, take a given idea, create code for it, but don't use any third-party code. So it's kind of your own fork, if you will, or fresh code. So, but this is an area that I think we need to make sure, and we need to have greater rigor. When you buy a device, and we need a mic in the back, when you buy, oh, you have a mic.
While MCP appears as a risk on the right, there's no security being checked at all on the left
the
either.
APIs are bloody insecure as well if they're not doing BOLA and volumetric analysis and things of that nature.
Yeah, so on both ends, it should
There's
be checked
risk
on that point. And as you said, don't use third-party libraries. I essentially write everything from my own frameworks because it's actually easier to maintain and integrate that than it is to let someone else change something elsewhere. You have no control over that.
Yep.
And you had to put in all the front-loaded effort of figuring out what was their set of quirks for building it in the first place.
And I didn't say not to use third-party libraries, just third-party libraries, just like Microsoft on the enterprise side, comes with a lot of risk. You know, and you have to evaluate it, assess it, et cetera. So again, APIs, volumetric issues, those types of things. Alyssa Knight, back when she was focused in on security, did a thing where she went into one of these large healthcare exchanges, just ran a couple of API environments, and in short order had access to tens of thousands of health records. Just, you know, a typical API exploit. So again, a lot of stuff there to consider. Agentic AI. Again, just a little thing there. The notion is you have an AI agent, you instruct the agent. You might have tiered views of agents. Certain agents are doing tasks on behalf of others. But a couple of questions is, what happens if the agent goes rogue? What happens if you have an account takeover of the agent? One of the quintessential issues in our profession is our cybersecurity tools run with elevated privileges in most environments. What if it's compromised? So you have an agent with entitlements to do a lot of really important work for you. It gets hit. Now what? Those types of issues, these are the things, there's not necessarily easy or good solutions to them right now, but we have to be thinking of those within our profession. And then a lot of times just agents may not necessarily have the appropriate context and other risks. And then I think one of the other things is vibe coding. This is a fascinating area. I mean, right now it's entrepreneurialism to the nth degree. You know, let's go build an app on X. That's great. Absolutely. We want to be able to do these things. The issue is, have we dramatically expanded our attack surface? Are we doing the appropriate securities like OWASP, ASVS, those sorts of things within that type of environment? You know, and then what happens if the models, the Russians, as an example, are poisoning a lot of the open source LLMs that are out there? They're feeding them with tons and tons of misinformation. So what's the attack surface? What type of data is the application handling? All sorts of different issues. So again, vibe coding is interesting. Whoops. Privacy and safety.
Hang on.
Yeah. If only somebody would have mentioned a mic earlier. Mm-hmm. It's an equalizer, but it also brings a lot of risks. You know, I'm not a surgeon, but if you give me a scalpel, I can cut someone open. I just wouldn't know what to do afterwards. You know.
To grow muscles, but
yeah,
but there is a high risk to that. I mean, you know, it impacts the other functionalities, other parts of the body. So
agree.
Just like anything on speed kills.
So you know, a lot of implications with this. Again, what's the context of the application, the data it processes, does it control operational technology? All of those things are things we need to be aware of. Lastly, I'm going to leave you with this, and I'll try to sum it up here. At Gartner, I had the kind of privilege to work in a couple of different areas. I worked around incident response, so some of the SOAR tools, Demisto before they were acquired and the like. But effectively, the area that I covered was FMC. And you know, Gartner, we love our acronyms, or at least, you know, when I was there, we did. What does FMC stand for? Fuzzy management crap. True. It's fuzzy management crap. Effectively, AI security, all the stuff that's going on still requires basic governance. You need to think about roles and responsibilities, dependencies, business context, operational context, how you look at the risk environment for it. There's a lot of things there that you should do. And when you think about your security program, start developing out kind of a comprehensive target operating model. This is what we're going to choose to insource. This is what we're going to choose to co-source. This is what we're going to choose to outsource. But as I noted in one of my books, declare war on ambiguity. None of this stuff should be ambiguous. Where are my third-party risks? Where are my dependencies? Are my dependencies on, you know, Jane or John Doe, key developer? Is it a particular location, a technology stack that may be kind of orphaned or atrophying? All of those things are essentially knowable. So I think one of the things that's really critical is build out that target operating model. And then you kind of put context around when, where, why, and how AI may be brought in. So, and then fundamentally, it's just really ensuring that there's zero ambiguity between what the board thinks, the executive leadership team, and what you as a security professional think is occurring. And how to do that communication. Part of our problem is we deal in very technical worlds. The board deals in a very different type of technical world. So we have to do translation. We have to kind of align the program to the business. So that was my high level rant on Black Hat and that, and then bringing agentic AI and other things in this.
Real quick, I want to go back to where you had the self-driving cars, what are they called?
Waymo.
The Waymos. So I was actually in one of them. It was pretty, I was not aware it was going to happen. So I got in and I was like, what the? So it was kind of a scary ride. But what I did find out was that these Waymos are frightening because they band together. And when they're driving, if one of them is trying to merge into the right and other cars aren't letting them in, the other Waymos will stop the other cars and block them so the Waymo can get into the lane. So this kind of goes back to some of the other things with AI where it's thinking for itself and kind of going rogue and doing other things because there's no guardrails up, because we just think that it's such a great silver bullet. But when you start to think about what these Waymos are doing, it's kind of frightening to think of how they're thinking on their own. Maybe I watched too much sci-fi, but they're thinking on their own and they're ganging up together to manipulate how the traffic is flowing to their advantage versus the other cars that are out there.
And they drive really damn slow. As a Californian, it's infuriating how slow they drive.
Yeah.
So, but again, a lot to think about. I urge start doing threat models around when, where, why, how you're using AI in your operating environment. Whoops. And with that, thank you guys. I think I got us in right at 7. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm in.
You touch quickly on board and being able to converge all that technical, tactical conversations to the board, where the SEC Security Commission, Security Exchange Commission says material fact, and that's our job, to bring that material fact to life, to protect the bottom line, protect people and customers, and bring that trust. When they stated there's no longer a cybersecurity professional or any expertise needed on the board, I'm curious, what are your thoughts about that? Because if we don't start, I don't like the word lobbying. If we don't start to advocate, that's a DC word. If we don't advocate for that, it's our responsibility to let them know what they don't know. What is your thoughts about that? Because
I mean, I think Bob Zukas from the Digital Directors Network did a stellar job of really trying to push that. I think the SEC pulled it back. They already have, the commitment from a independent financial board member. I think the risk is on the punitive side with litigation and class action lawsuits and securities and exchange lawsuits based on companies. You didn't have appropriate oversight from your board to deal with these risks. We're going to have a shareholder lawsuit, those types of things. I think that's kind of the support we have now. I would have liked to have seen that. I'm a QTE. I wanted that to have occurred. But I think, the one thing that the U.S. does better than any other country is we sue like crazy. So if there is something really, really bad, you file a lawsuit and hopefully the board and the company gets it. But material, it's real simple to say. I've read the 186 pages of the SEC's guidance on cybersecurity and risk disclosures and the like. Material risk. There's a vast array of on how companies look and define things like materiality. So it's challenging. Other questions, concerns, complaints?
Comment.
Maybe controversial.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. So I'm coming from Black Belt, Lean Six Sigma environment, and I come into cybersecurity. There is something called FMEA, which is Failure Mode Effect Analysis. Has anyone heard of it? Okay, that's how I see threat modeling. I think we really...
How things fail.
Thinking of all the ways that things can fail and get everybody together, talk about it, figure it out how to fix it before you make it, during the design process. And we keep, in cybersecurity profession, we just use so much jargon. We use so many times things like technical, non-technical. I think we need to just open up cybersecurity.
Sigma is a perfect discipline to bring into cyber.
Absolutely.
Error rates.
I used Six Sigma all the time in my job as a data security manager, but I think it's also part of our job as a cybersecurity professional to bring people together and let's get away with these jargons and all these acronyms. They are so confusing.
I agree, and then I'm going to use two acronyms, or not acronyms, but jargon. So one of the interesting things with AI is that it's probabilistic, right? You know, there's a probability that you'll get some response given a given input, but that response may vary from one environment to another, from one prompt to another, versus deterministic. Every time I do X, I get Y. We need to ask ourselves, when and why should we look for deterministic outcomes versus probabilistic outcomes? And that's that's tough. I mean, you know, the engineering side of that, it's really tough. I remember back when I was at AT&T Labs, Dr. Ed Amoroso, who's now with Tag Cyber, he was the CISO of AT&T, and he put it perfectly. He goes, if a software engineer built a bridge, would you drive across it? If a software engineer built a plane, would you fly in it? If a software engineer built an elevator, would you ride in it to the top floor? And his response was effectively, if you valued your life, no. You know, the engineering around those other disciplines is very strict. We've got a lot of probabilistic issues in code and code development that create a lot of these issues, but it's an infinitesimally challenging domain. So, but Six Sigma should be used everywhere. Nope.
But an opportunity to be a software engineer, don't you think so? Because with vibe coding and all these LLMs, anybody can software within no time. I mean, it just gives the abilities. Ability are the capabilities, delivers the each and every person, you know, and that too, it's free. Most of these models are free. So everyone. So the question is, the bigger question or a philosophical question is, are you comfortable with what you have built?
Yeah. With skilled people, vibe coding absent that skill and context is terrifying. If the application's material. Yes, exactly. That attack surface is growing exponentially.
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, when everyone starts building their own software, obviously the risk is going to, I mean, there is no big companies like Oracle, Microsoft, or even your Gartner, right? Your ex-employer Gartner, you know, who needs to come and say, hey, this is the hype cycle, this is the, you know, this is the future of the software, but it's all in everyone's hand.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Go Navy.
Absolutely. So as
I know what city I live in.
So as a working student, one of the things I've seen with a lot of my classmates is vibe coding, right? In these, especially coding classes. And some of the things I've seen submitted, it's incredible. It's like a whole list of recursions. It creates a ton of variables, and then does an API call to ChatGPT to spit out the final product.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that in the professional setting? Like, how do you catch these hallucinations from GPT with coding before it hits production and navigate the risks associated with that?
I think it goes back to like Six Sigma and things of that nature, where you have to do the analysis on data quality, data integrity, and error rates. I also think going back to like the fuzzy management crap, there's a governance model. What do you allow to be done versus not allowed to be done in an environment? Perplexity. What is one of the back end LLMs on Perplexity? DeepSeek. Yeah. Do you want your company using Perplexity and having access to DeepSeek, or do you turn that off in the model? And then do you do it administratively or technically?
As somebody that does a lot of vibe coding basically every day, I mean, I've converted my entire business basically into using code generation models.
Yep.
This man right here, Alex, and I have done this quite a few times. And I think it's just a big misunderstanding. I mean, vibe coding can mean many different things. AWS bought 3,000 licenses to Cursor, which, I mean, it's big. And if you use it the right way, you can tell it that code unless it uses Microsoft's MCP model to do code checking, which
Yep.
means nothing
Run
goes in there.
ASVS against the code base and all sort. Yeah, it's just like open source libraries. I'm not anti-open source in any way, shape, or form. I think that's where innovation comes. Vibe coding will drive a hell of a lot of innovation. Just needs to be governed correctly, secured correctly. That's my point.
Exactly. And I mean, to the point that it does make a lot of people software engineer, but they're not. So, yeah, I mean, that would be ridiculous.
Maybe that happened.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So my issue is, I think the big word for me is guardrails.
Yeah.
And they haven't been up. They're still not up. And people are still doing these, I think, pretty stupid things, because when ChatGPT first came out, everybody jumped on the bandwagon and started using it and doing it, not even understanding all of their company's information was going into it.
Mm-hmm.
And they had no clue. And then even though the company started saying you're not supposed to do it, people were still doing it. So the guardrails still aren't even up, and people are still using it in ways that they don't understand. Like you said, the back end of this is DeepSeek. People don't even know what that means. People stock, people still do this, people still do that. I keep saying, don't put your resumes out on LinkedIn because that helps the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
What do people do? They put all their information out on LinkedIn, right? So their guardrails are not even close to being up.
Yeah.
I mean, they come out of the box with Microsoft Entra. It's just a question of turning it on. It's just people just don't do it.
It goes to safety by design and default or hardening guidelines.
Yeah, I mean, if your CISO is allowing their employees to use ChatGPT unregulated without a DSPM model around it, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
You're just flat out getting. So people need to get up and stop it through policy.
So on mine, we have thank you for the discussion and aloha.
Aloha. Simone. Sir.
Vibe coding works because the LLMs, the AI, has essentially vacuumed up all the code that other people have written, and it's just mass copyright infringement.
Yep.
So it's great at giving you the 101st version, but if you just get anything complex, it doesn't understand anything, but it will confidently give you an answer saying, oh, this will do what you want, even if it absolutely won't. The second thing to consider is that what vibe coding does is essentially it gives you a tool that does all the typing for you. The typing is not the hard part to programming. The hard part to programming is debugging it and integrating different pieces to work together. And there was a meme that went out today that basically said, hey, what's the point of vibe coding if I still have to pay a developer at the end to make it actually work on anything? And the point of it, a good use for it is essentially as a rough draft. You can draw a picture of what you'd like your painting to look like. You'll do stick figure drawings and then rely on someone who has talent to draw you with 5 fingers, for example.
Yeah. And it effectively, everyone here is right. I mean, the reality is that vibe coding, like all these other things, is part and parcel of what we do today. How do we secure it? How do we govern it? How do we think about it? Those are, I think, the really heavy issues. We can't get away from that proverbial FMC in your operating environment. Segue.